When you are the world's only male IS operator, how awkward is it to enroll in an all-girls academy? The male lead is named Ichika. Never mind becoming the center of attention in an instant. His childhood friend's look of unbearable embarrassment, plus a woman's inexplicable punch, instantly sent Ichika's heart to freezing point, before the male lead could even react. The follow-up, double strike, dragged Ichika right back to reality. The domineering woman in front of him was none other than Ichika's older sister Chifuyu. As a first-generation IS pilot, his sister's terrifying strength once struck fear into everyone. But who could have expected such a turn of fate? His sister actually became a teacher. With that strict teaching style alone, poor Ichika could only endure it in silence as the scene changed. It was already dusk. Although many eyes followed him on the way back, Ichika still forced himself to go to the dorm assigned by the academy. But the next scene shocked him outright. Ichika was stunned for 300 years. For a moment, only awkwardness filled the air. Who could possibly handle this? Being assigned to the same room as his childhood friend was something Ichika had never dared imagine. But following the logic that no grudge should go unpaid, Hoki grabbed her wooden sword and came to demand an explanation. As the furious wooden sword pierced through the door, Ichika stumbled and fell to the side. In the end, that awkward scene was seen by all his classmates. After crawling and begging in a rather humble way, Ichika finally managed to move Hoki. But when they returned to the room, Ichika's attitude suddenly changed. While Hoki was still stunned, he mysteriously started teasing her. Tell me, how could this not be awkward? Looking at Hoki growing more and more shy, Ichika could not help teasing her, but then again, when a boy suddenly appears for no reason. Inside an all-girls academy, there will always be someone who cannot stand it. For example, the foreign young lady, Cecilia. When all their classmates recommended Ichika to represent the girls' academy in the IS tournament, Cecilia was the first to object. In her eyes, letting a boy represent a girls' school was an utterly foolish idea. Seeing Ichika remain calm, Cecilia decided to mock him. But that was exactly what Ichika wanted. Rather than argue with words, Ichika preferred to let his strength speak. The scene changed. On the training field, after Chief Yu approved their duel, these rivals could not wait even a moment. Seeing Cecilia fully armed and prepared, Ichika's personal machine had only just arrived. He still remembered the first time he touched an IS. That dreamlike feeling was finally turning into a real battle this time. As Byakushiki's control panel unfolded, Ichika gained a rough understanding of it. Compared with Cecilia's high-burst, long-range IS unit, Byakushiki was a close combat machine, and he had not fully adapted to it yet. But in order to prove himself to the world, Ichika would give this fight everything he had. Do you know how much a girl changes once she is drawn in by the male lead's charm? 1 second, Cecilia was clashing with him in the classroom. The next second, she was clinging to Ichika on the training field. She even fought to take a private photo with him. What exactly happened? Time goes back half a day. With Ichika's Byakushiki deployed, the battle between their two IS units officially began. Cecilia's arrogant attitude from above made Ichika feel displeased. But against the surprise attacks from blue tears, Ichika, still unused to Byakushiki, could barely fight back. Seeing Ichika's miserable state, Cecilia became even more arrogant and overbearing. But after Ichika finally recovered, he finally found the equipment inside Byakushiki. Seeing his shield value constantly dropping, Ichika knew this could not go on. So right now, going all in was the best choice. Byakushiki rushed forward at an unbelievable speed towards Cecilia. Although this caused the shield value to drop sharply, Ichika finally closed the distance between them. And during the battle just now, Blue Tear's fatal weakness was fully exposed. That was when Cecilia controlled the wing units to attack. Her main body would enter a state where she could not move. So, as long as Ichika could dodge the wings, while closing the distance again, victory would surely belong to him. But heaven never lets everything go your way. Ichika calculated everything, but missed Cecilia's close-range defense system. Even so, Chifuyu was not worried at all, because she knew the IS would protect Ichika. As the adaptation program was shut down, Byakushiki finally evolved into Ichika's dedicated form. Only then did Cecilia realize that the Ichika who had fought her just now had only been using Byakushiki's factory default form. Then against the current complete form of Byakushiki, did Cecilia still have any chance of winning? The answer was unexpectedly small. Under the public gaze of the CDL, the entire arena was left confused. This time, even Ichika himself could not understand it. Chief Yu slowly explained the reason. In fact, the root cause of Ichika's loss was that he did not understand Yukihira. With Yukihira's trait of turning the body into a blade, Byakushiki, during burst combat, can convert shield energy into attack power. Although this ability is excellent in real combat, it is not so friendly in a mock battle, because once the shield energy reaches 0, the system automatically identifies it as defeat. That was why Ichika lost. Afterward, although Cecilia won the match, a special feeling for Ichika was planted in her heart. Originally a long-range unit held a huge advantage against a close combat IS, and as the representative exchange student, Cecilia was already an elite among elites. Yet now she had almost lost to a complete outsider. If that one strike had landed, what would have happened? But Ichika did not dwell on it. Then again, when everyone trained in the simulation field the next day, Cecilia became especially concerned about Ichika. I think there is a high chance she had fallen for him. And after this incident, Cecilia voluntarily gave up being the representative, allowing Ichika to represent the academy instead. She also apologized for her previous rudeness. Taking advantage of the news club's arrival, Cecilia rushed to take a private photo with Ichika. But, as for the result, if childhood friend number 1, Hoki, meeting number 2, Huang Lingyin, was already a battlefield of jealousy, then what happens when a blonde loli joins in? I would call that top-tier social chaos. After the IS duel with the blonde girl ended, Ichika successfully won the class representative position. Now the tournament was about to begin, but when they heard that Class 2, their opponent, had suddenly changed its representative at the last minute, wasn't that clearly refusing to play fair? Just then, speak of the devil, and she arrived. Ling had actually come here to issue a declaration of war, but her seemingly cool appearance received this evaluation from Ichika. That was kind of embarrassing. However, Ling was quickly punished. The moment Chifuyu arrived, Ling became as scared as a rabbit seeing a tiger. In the end, she could only throw down a harsh line and leave regretfully. The scene changed to lunchtime. Although Ling had just finished making threats, it did not affect Ichika's desire to eat with her at all, and that longing even made him ignore the yearning gazes of the other girls. Seeing the two chatting happily, the harem members finally could not take it anymore. They angrily asked whether the two were dating. In an instant, Ling became extremely embarrassed. But through one mistake after another, Ichika gave a scumbag-like answer. I think any girl who liked him would feel hurt. In the end, he even dressed it up as common knowledge. Huki was childhood friend number 1, while Ling was only childhood friend number 2. As for Cecilia's position, Ling did not care, but that made both girls even angrier. Seeing the battlefield of jealousy take shape, just as the harem members were about to decide their rankings, the sudden class bell rang, saving the confused Ichika. But do you think the two girls would really let it go? The answer is definitely no. During the after-school IS dual training they had arranged, poor Ichika was repaired by them in turns. The two satisfied girls left freely, leaving Ichika alone in the lounge regretting everything. Just then, the sports drink and toweling brought were perfectly timed care and tenderness. In order to be alone with Ichika, Ling waited from dusk until night, just to confirm his feelings. But this was the answer she received. Not only that, when Ling asked why the two of them lived together, Ichika still used the words childhood friends to brush Ling off. In an instant, Ling felt extremely wronged, but Ling told herself from the heart to try one more time. Following the idea that being childhood friends made it acceptable, Ling happily wanted to swap dorms with Hoki. As the main heroine of the harem, Hoki was the first to object. She picked up her wooden sword and was ready to strike. If Ling had not deployed her IS in time, the consequences would be unimaginable. But this sudden attack also angered Ling. She had clearly come with a smile, wanting to switch dorms. Not only did Ichika stand aside without expressing an opinion, he even allowed the cold-faced Hoki to attack her. And he was still smiling. Ling finally said that if that was the case, then goodbye. Then she left without looking back. This time, Ichika really acted like a scumbag. This twin-tailed girl is seriously fierce. Not only is she brutal in close combat, she is also good at long-range attacks. However, the person currently beating up the male lead from every angle is actually still his childhood friend. What exactly is going on? It turns out Ling transferred to the academy after great hardship, for the sake of her love for Ichika. But whether they were alone together, or when Ling deliberately brought up their childhood promise, this guy Ichika simply refused to understand. It was as if he were an emotionless killer, repeatedly ignoring Ling's affection. That led to the scene at the beginning. The dissatisfaction in her heart was pushed to the limit. She kept using her dragon cannon to attack. The attacks from every angle put enormous pressure on Ichika. Seeing the current situation turn into a one-sided war of attrition where he only ran away, Ichika gritted his teeth and still refused to give up. But they were clearly both using Yukihira. So why could his sister win the tournament, while he ended up so miserable? Suddenly, Ichika seemed to think of something. The instant acceleration he learned from Chifuyu could allow an IS to instantly reach top speed. Although it could only be used once, this was exactly the right moment to activate it. But just then, an attack that pierced the sky exploded across the scene. For a moment, no one knew what had happened. The classmates were guessing. The harem members were nervous. This sudden blow made Chifuyu realize something was wrong. As the shield barrier shut down, Ling said there was an emergency and quickly retreated. But Byakushiki suddenly displayed a warning window. Ichika suddenly realized he had been locked on by the enemy. After learning the situation, Ling did not hesitate to stand in front of Ichika, preparing to hold off the enemy alone. But a battlefield changes in an instant. Before the two could even catch their breath, the second attack came precisely at them. A mechanical arm stretched out from the smoke. As a metal head appeared, a massive IS unit suddenly emerged before them. Looking at its brutal appearance, Ichika even wondered whether this was still an IS. Was there really someone piloting it inside? At the same time, inside the command room, the teacher ordered them to retreat immediately. But when Ichika thought of everyone who had not yet reached the safe zone, he absolutely refused to leave. Suddenly, the black iron launched an attack, facing the enemy charging fiercely toward them. The two of them naturally refused to back down. While keeping their distance, they made a strategy. Ling would provide cover, while Ichika looked for a chance to attack. Seeing their division of labor clearly, the black iron seemed to sense it as well. It plunged straight into the particle cloud. Using the intense field interference, it cut off headquarters control over the two of them. Watching both sides still fighting on the command screen, Cecilia volunteered to Chifuyu to deploy, but she was stopped because she had no real combat experience. Now the students in the passage could not enter, and the upperclassmen inside trying to rescue people could not get out. Everyone could only worry helplessly with no solution. They could only place their hopes on the two defeating black iron, yet Ichika's defense nullifying attack was once again dodged by the enemy with ease. You have to know, this was already the fourth time. Seeing that his remaining energy was only enough for one final nullification attack, the two had to rethink their strategy. But at that moment, black iron suddenly went still. Looking at the fully armed metal lump in the smoke, Ichika questioned again. Was there really someone inside? No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like an unmanned machine. Ling agreed with this view. At that moment, Ichika's eyes grew determined. If it was an unmanned machine, then he could attack at full power. He could use Yukihira's Reiraku Byakuya form. This battle absolutely could not be lost, because the two carried the mission of protecting everyone. Under the full propulsion of Ling's cannon, massive energy flowed into Byakushiki. It reached the conditions for using Reiraku Byakuya. In an instant, as the sword light extended, this was a strike filled with the will to protect. But how could an unmanned machine fear pain? Even so, facing the incoming attack, Ichika was not panicked at all, because everything was still within his control. Cecilia's appearance gave Black Iron a fatal crisis. Ichika knew that as long as it was Cecilia's attack, it would be enough to destroy everything. But was that really the case? Black Iron's sudden dying counterattack ultimately sent Ichika into the infirmary. Fortunately, the result was still perfect. They successfully defeated Black Iron, but just as everyone was overjoyed that they had successfully protected the academy, on the other side, inside the underground laboratory, the teacher's analysis results came out. This S unit was indeed unmanned, and it used an IS core that had never been registered. But why would it attack the academy? Thinking of this, Chifuyu's expression could not help becoming serious. What kind of experience is it when the world's second male IS operator also arrives at the girls' academy? Just looking at Charles's innocent appearance, the classmates instantly exploded with excitement. One after another, they fought to protect him. But he was destined to belong to Ichika, because he was a boy after all. Ichika grabbed the shy Charles and ran out of the classroom without looking back. For a moment, the classmates were extremely envious. Due to the special piloting requirements of IS units, the two had to avoid the girls to change into training clothes. But this simple hand-holding gesture, more or less, made people feel that, since heaven arranged for these two to meet, why not just pair them up? Seeing more and more girls gathering toward them, if they did not run now, it would really be too late. The confused Charles could not understand why everyone was so fanatical, but after thinking carefully about their identities, and remembering this was a girls' academy, he seemed to understand immediately. Then again, time waits for no one. Now was not the time to chat. Seeing Ichika changing clothes, Charles instinctively covered his face. This left Ichika stunned. He wondered what this guy was being shy about, but Ichika did not pay it much attention. He just did not expect that when he turned his head, Charles had already finished changing. That speed was way too fast. Ichika really wanted to ask him the secret, because boys' training suits tend to get stuck. But Charles, blushing, did not answer. The scene changed. Inside the training field, because Ichika was a little late, the girls of the class finally caught him slipping. They grabbed Ichika and lectured him. If Charles had not arrived in time, I think Ichika would have completely broken down inside. But since they had come to the training field, there was no reason not to have a mock battle. Piloting a second-generation IS machine, Charles issued a challenge to Ichika. As he rushed upward, Charles pulled out long-range firearms to avoid being kited. Ichika desperately closed the distance. But how could Charles let him have his way? While executing an extreme dodge, he fired from a distance and began wearing him down. Seeing Byakushiki's shield energy drop rapidly, Ichika could only silently accept defeat. But on the way home after school, Ichika thought about many things. Asking himself honestly, was it really okay to stay this week? He still remembered that year. Chifuyu, who had just won the national championship, successfully advanced to the world finals. But the match everyone had been waiting for never happened. Because on that very day, he was kidnapped and imprisoned by strangers. And to save him, Chifuyu gave up the finals without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, it was already dusk. Ichika dragged his exhausted body back to the dorm. At that moment, Charles was taking a shower. Suddenly, Ichika remembered there was no body wash in the bathroom, so he took the initiative to bring it over. But the next scene left Ichika completely dumbfounded. No matter what, he never would have imagined that Charles was actually a girl. What would happen if, during class, someone suddenly did this to you? I think anyone would be stunned. That messy ASR line made no sense at all, the kind that makes the situation even more chaotic. As the Imperial transfer student, Laura not only had extremely strong personal ability, but also owned one of the most advanced IS units today. However, her one obsession was that she would never acknowledge Ichika as Instructor Chifuyu's brother, and the depth of this resentment made her dare to openly fire at Ichika. If Charles had not acted in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Seeing the two sides at sword's point, with battle about to erupt, the teacher's alarm sounded across the training field. Laura helplessly released her IS form, but the hatred in her heart was still growing. The academy at dusk was filled with a tense atmosphere. Laura was venting the dissatisfaction in her heart. In her heart, Instructor Chifuyu was like a figure of faith. Yet now the instructor had come to teach at the IS Academy, surrounded by students with no sense of danger. That was a fact Laura could not tolerate. But no matter how much Laura could not understand it, Chifuyu had no obligation to tell her why. In the end, Laura could only leave angrily. Under the moon before dawn, Laura's hatred reached its peak. That garbled ASR line is impossible to interpret reliably. The next day on the training field, just as Ling and Cecilia prepared to spar, Laura suddenly descended and challenged them. Seeing her arrogant attitude and her disrespectful words, the two girls launched their attacks at the same time. Meanwhile, when Ichika learned about this, he had just rushed to the scene and saw that both girls were already losing, even when Ling used her dragon cannon to attack. In front of Schwartz Regan with AIC, all abilities would be suppressed. No matter how powerful Ling's dragon cannon was, Laura completely suppressed it. Not only that, while restraining Ling, Laura still had the strength to fight Cecilia without falling behind. In the end, Laura grabbed Ling and smashed her towards Cecilia. At the scene, Ichika looked on worriedly. The two girls looked utterly defeated. But Laura's offensive did not stop. However, just then Cecilia had a flash of inspiration. She suddenly activated her close-range defense cannon to counterattack. This hit Laura squarely. But was this match really over? The answer was no. As the smoke cleared, Laura appeared again without a scratch. The whip-like cables extending from Schwartz Regan hit the two girls with perfect accuracy. This was a complete one-sided crushing. Cecilia and Ling had no ability to fight back. You have to know that if their IS units were released now, the two girls would be in mortal danger. Seeing Laura's triumphant gaze, Ichika could no longer watch. In an instant, light appeared in space. Ichika summoned Byakushiki and instantly split open the protective barrier. With the will to protect the two girls, Ichika launched a fierce attack on Laura. But when he truly came into contact with that barrier, he realized just how powerless his attack was. Just then, an attack from the sky came as Charles joined the battlefield. Although Byakushiki's shield energy was nearly gone, Ichika still decisively used instant acceleration to carry the two girls safely to the edge of the training field. Meanwhile, Charles's situation was quite bad. Not only was his body firmly restrained by the cables, but his own attacks were completely blocked. Just as, at that exact moment, The ruthless Laura prepared to end everything. Chifuyu appeared, holding a 40-meter-long blade, and blocked Schwartz Regan with a human body. However, Chifuyu did not punish Laura. And this dispute ultimately ended only with the two girls injured, because the real duel would happen in the school year tournament. What kind of experience is it? To kiss the male lead in front of the entire harem, while all the girls were dumbfounded. I think what they felt even more was regret. Regret that they had not gotten there first. But then again, Laura had treated the male lead like that 1 second. So why did she want to bind herself to him for life the next? What exactly happened in between? Time goes back one day. At the scene of the IS battle, Ichika recalled Laura's previous terrible attitude toward the girls. Although he had already tried to act then, he had been stopped by Chifuyu. And, in the end, that matter was left unsettled. But the hatred in Ichika's heart was not something that would just disappear. This time, Ichika was determined to settle things with Laura. The battle was about to begin. Charles appeared at the perfect moment. The unexpected attack made Laura take a small loss, seeing Charles keep attacking, and forcing Laura into a disadvantage. How could Hoki as her teammate stand by? But Hoki never would have expected that she, who had originally planned to fight Ichika, would be ruthlessly thrown out of the training field by Laura using AIC. But all of this was actually within Ichika's expectations, because their plan, from the start, was to eliminate Hoki first, as her shield value reached 0. Hoki's IS was released. Charles once again joined the duel against Laura. At the same time, Ichika activated Reiraku Byakuya form, preparing to coordinate with Charles for the final charge. But, the moment he landed, Ichika seemed to notice something. Just like during Cecilia's battle, when Laura activated her AIC defense, she could not deal with a third party's attack. After realizing this, the two advanced with unstoppable momentum. But, at this critical moment, Byaku Shiki messed up, because his remaining shield energy was insufficient, as Reiraku Byakuya was released. Laura sounded the horn of counterattack. At this moment, all her pent-up frustration was being released. However, if she attacked Ichika at full power, she would have no room to defend against Charles's instant acceleration. Even then, Laura still had not realized how disadvantageous it was to fight 2 against 1. Instead, her head was clouded by rage. But this next instant kill move would make her remember it forever, along with her shield value dropping sharply. The outcome was obvious. Without giving her any chance to breathe, Charles pursued the advantage, wanting to completely crush her will. But Laura absolutely could not lose, she recalled. Her identity as an experimental subject born for war, having endured countless trials since childhood, she was a genuine top-tier soldier. But after IS units appeared in the world, because she could not adapt to the era in time, Laura was branded as useless. It was not until Chifuyu appeared that she completely awakened the self-abased Laura. In Laura's eyes, Chifuyu, who stood above everyone, was practically a figure of faith. Yet such a perfect instructor had gained her only stain because of Ichika. This was a fact Laura could not tolerate. In an instant, intense electric currents appeared. Laura's IS began melting and deforming. No one knew what was happening. The melting machine began reshaping itself. Gradually, it actually evolved into Chifuyu's appearance. Looking at Ichika's trembling hands, I think everyone understood what Ichika would say. The black machine that transformed into Chifuyu's appearance was not only copying her face, it also copied the true sword techniques learned from Chifuyu. But because of that, Ichika was completely enraged that II swordsmanship belonging to Chifuyu was originally born to protect others. Yet the black machine was using it to hurt people. Thinking of this, Ichika, filled with emotion, was angrier than ever before. He wanted to personally defeat this fake, using the energy he obtained from Charles. Ichika once again summoned Yukihira. The fighting Ichika now had adrenaline surging through him. His concentration had clearly reached its peak, because there was only one chance. Fortunately, Ichika lived up to the trust and saved Laura. He saved this pitiful child. Afterward, under Chifuyu's patient guidance, Laura finally let go of the knot in her heart. But regarding the fact that Ichika had saved her, Laura actually decided to stay with him for life. That garbled English ASR line is useless. As the saying goes, the more she hated before, the more she loves now. As one of the harem members, Laura perfectly illustrates this point. Ever since Schwartz Regan went berserk, Laura, who had once lost herself, fantasized about becoming like Chifuyu. Ichika disregarded his own safety and saved her from that confused illusion. But what Ichika did not know was that for Laura what was saved was not just her body, but her heart as well. Clearly, Ichika had become the person she belonged to, but he was not prepared for that at all. Touch me, my husband. Seeing Ichika's hands with nowhere to go, Laura directly hit him with a cross-legged lock to make him wake up. But just then, someone arrived. Huki came over carrying her wooden sword. A nameless fire burned in her heart. At this point, Ichika finally understood the unpleasantness of a forced startup. So he immediately ran to find Charles to play with. But in fact, Charles knew everything. This garbled ASR line is impossible to interpret. Another garbled ASR line with no clear meaning. But because he could not resist the feelings he had inside, he did not mind too much. Being happy right now was what mattered most. But little did he know how painful this scene looked. In the eyes of the other harem members, how could Ling possibly tolerate this? She wanted to explode on the spot. But just then, Laura arrived. And so, the three immediately formed an investigation team. Without another word, they headed straight for the swimsuit shop. However, after looking around, they found nothing. This made Laura extremely anxious. She immediately contacted the combat squad back in the Empire and asked everyone to help her make a plan. But the equally anxious knight was Charles, because if he did not hurry, he would be exposed. He hurriedly took off his outer coat, seeing that the situation was bad. Ichika immediately began silently reciting pi, trying to calm himself down with it. Fortunately, his endurance paid off. Charles, wearing a swimsuit, looked so shy and adorable that Ichika's heart raced. But the small noise the two accidentally made caught Chifuyu's attention. She pulled open the curtain, leaving the two with nowhere to hide. The final result was obvious. Looking at this disappointing younger brother, Chifuyu could only sigh. But then again, Ichika actually had a secret hidden in his heart. Compared with all the harem members, the one he liked most was actually Chifuyu. Who would dare believe that? But none of this affected him from continuing to manage his harem. At dinner, seeing Cecilia having trouble moving, Ichika took the initiative to ask if he could feed her. This made Cecilia extremely excited. He accidentally noticed Hoki's serious face. But Ichika did not care. He continued feeding her in his own way. Hoki's brows tightened, as if she might explode at any moment. And just then, that garbled ASR line is unclear. Another garbled ASR line is unclear. Another garbled ASR line is unclear. After Chifuyu scolded everyone, she slammed the door and left. Accordingly, the feeding operation was forced to stop. Cecilia was very dissatisfied. As compensation, Ichika invited her to meet at night. But the instant Cecilia blushed, I knew she had misunderstood. Back at the dorm, Cecilia immediately changed into her winning outfit. Although being seen by her roommate was quite embarrassing, she felt it was all worth it. But when she went to find Ichika full of joy, she discovered that every harem member had actually come. But what exactly were they doing in there? Poor king. Everyone pressed against the door in unison, wanting to peek inside. But how could a tiny wooden door bear that weight? Soon it collapsed along with true love. But at least they finally saw what the two were doing. Although Chifuyu's mood was disturbed, she actually knew why the girls had come. So she sent Ichika away and prepared to talk with them. Sure enough, when Chifuyu mentioned Ichika, all the girls cared a lot. But Chifuyu's attitude was like this. Yes, you are a little silly. What are you doing? It seems Chifuyu is the biggest love rival for all the girls. With a loud boom in the sky, a robot made a shining entrance. No, it was Hoki's sister making a shining entrance. Do not be fooled by this bunny girl who looks unbelievably cute. She is actually a genius in the scientific world. Ichika's Byakashiki was created by her hands. More importantly, Taban is also Hoki's older sister. And of course, Taban's only purpose in coming to the academy this time was to deliver the IS that Haoki had been longing for. That garbled ASR line is unclear. The sky boomed once again. But what appeared this time was no longer a robot. It was a genuine IS unit. And it was also something everyone could hardly believe, a fourth-generation machine. You have to know that IS development in various countries is still in the third-stage testing phase. Yet Akatsubaki is already a fourth-generation unit. Who would dare believe that? Even Huki herself could not believe it. But the following test forced everyone to be convinced. The instant burst attack that shot into the sky, combined with perfect defense against artillery fire, had already far surpassed the performance of third-generation units. Huki was very satisfied with it. But just then, an emergency occurred. According to an A-rank order from the higher-ups, the third-generation unmanned machine Gospel from another nation was heading toward this place. The academy had already used training machines to block the surrounding area, but the key to breaking through it still had to be the male lead and the others' personal units. Meanwhile, according to the data sent back by the training machines, Gospel had extremely high mobility and long-range attack power, and because it was flying at supersonic speed, there was no way to judge its close combat ability. This also meant they only had one chance to defeat it, so it had to be the personal unit with the strongest mobility. Without question, that could only be Ichika. But in real combat, no one could be sure about this kind of thing. With Akatsubaki's help, the two soared into the sky, approaching the target at a speed no slower than instant acceleration. Just as Hoki learned from the satellite that the unmanned machine was right in front of them. Ichika activated rare Kubikuya form, but Gospel seemed to have expected it, while constantly dodging. It instead used artillery fire to scatter them. Seeing the current plan fail, the two could only try to confront Gospel head-on. But just then, a ship actually appeared on the sea. Forced to miss the chance, Huki was extremely angry. They were clearly stowaways, so why bother saving them? But Ichika would not allow that to happen. However, the price of blocking the attack for them was that Byakushiki lost the ability to keep fighting. This time, Hoki was truly angry. But was it really okay to ignore them? Ichika would not allow Hoki to become so cold and ruthless. She could not ignore the weak, just because she had obtained powerful strength. That was not like the original Huki at all. But just as Hoki lowered her weapon and fell into thought, Gospel suddenly launched an attack. Do you know how absurd it gets? Once a villain becomes powerful, seeing the enemy unmanned machine rushing toward our side, Chifuyu made a decisive call, and decided to have the highly mobile Akatsubaki cooperate with Ichika, using Reiraku Byakuya's instant burst characteristic, to take down the opponent. But once the idea was actually put into practice, they discovered that nothing went as planned. The opponent was simply too strong. And in order to protect Hoki, Ichika was seriously injured, and fell into an endless sleep. At this moment, Chifuyu was furious. His companions were depressed. Laura was resentful. But all of this seemed to be saying that Hoki, who had obtained power, was only a violent maniac. The beach at dusk was filled with memories. She still remembered when they were very young, because Huki liked tying up her hair. Her classmates always mocked her as a tomboy. They also used that to bully her in every possible way. But every time that happened, Ichika would always step forward to protect her. However, after returning to reality, Huki realized that it was not only in the past. Even now, it was the same. Perhaps Link's slap gave her motivation, now that Ichika had fallen. As the fourth-generation pilot, how could she remain depressed? Seeing everyone who came to support her, hope burned in Hoki's heart. If one try was not enough, they would try again. Laura used her Schwartz-Regan to quickly locate Gospel's position. Although she knew this operation disobeyed orders, Huki had a reason she had to fight. That was to protect Ichika. The starry night sky carried a dangerous aura. Far away, waiting beneath the ring of light, was Gospel. After confirming the position, Laura did not hesitate at all, and fired the opening shot of this battle. Gospel, struck by the attack, also awakened. The instant it released its barrier, it launched a fierce attack on Laura. But unfortunately, this was a many-on-one fight. How could Gospel gain any advantage? What no one expected was that, on the surface, Gospel was frantically fleeing. In reality, it had already prepared its counterattack strategy in secret. Perhaps at this moment it could neither defeat Cecilia, nor withstand Ling's dragon cannon. But all of this was within its control, because it was waiting for an opportunity. An opportunity to look heavily damaged, fall into the sea, and appear scrapped. As the saying goes, only after breaking can one be reborn. Only when the Aya's core suffered a fatal threat could Gospel use it to successfully open its second form, and once it unlocked a higher level, everyone would lose any chance to attack. First Hoki, then Cecilia. With such an obvious gap in strength, there was no way to reverse the outcome. In an instant, no one on the field had any strength left to fight. Huki failed once again. That garbled ASR line is unclear. The legendary White Knight in silver IS armor could withstand all incoming attacks by herself. But, after that battle, the White Knight mysteriously disappeared. And that disappearance has already lasted 10 full years. When the White Knight appeared again, what no one expected was that she had become a shackle sealing Byakushiki's power. Because Byakushiki used the White Knight's IS core when Ichika was heavily injured, unconscious and longing for power. She appeared in Byakushiki's mental space. The White Knight protected this power throughout her life, so that one day, there would still be a place where it was needed. Clearly, the time had now come. The person who wholeheartedly wanted to protect his companions had appeared. In the deep sea of endless failures, Ichika's appearance was like a beam of light entering Hoki's world. The second form, Setsura, officially joined the battle. Seeing Ichika arrive, his companions ignited with hope. At the same time, the desire to protect swelled in Hoki's heart like never before. Its intensity even caused Akatsubaki to activate its final form. Huki was determined to win this battle. The moment she joined the front line, Huki opened fire and activated energy sharing with Ichika. With their shield values restored, it was time to launch the second all-out attack. Taking the lead, Akatsubaki wielded dual swords and fought Gospel to the death. Huki originally thought she could pin down the unmanned machine and create an opening for Ichika, but she did not expect that the angel form Gospel was far stronger than just a little. After several coordinated attacks with her teammates, they gained no real advantage against Gospel. Seeing it go berserk again and launch its offensive, everyone knew that if they did not make a real move soon, defeat would only be a matter of time. But just then, while Gospel was locked in an attack recovery state, Ichika, directly pushed by Akushiki's output to maximum, in an instant, massive energy carried Gospel roaring forward. But even so, Gospel still did not give up. Its trembling right hand tried to seize Ichika's throat. But Ichika had not given up either. With all the strength in his body, Ichika forcefully broke open Gospel's IS core. Finally, as the light on the unmanned machine's wings disappeared, this operation ended in victory for the IS Academy. But then again, regarding everyone's disobedience of orders this time, Ichika's teacher did not give them a friendly look. Not only did she make everyone write self-reflections, she also tortured them with punishment-style training. But none of this would affect Ichika from continuing to open his harem route. For example, while everyone was eating the celebration meal, Ichika secretly went on a date with Hoki. However, just as the two were about to pledge their feelings, the people who had to come all arrived. Do you know how hard it is to be a harem member in the IS world? Let's not even mention all the incidents. Every day, you have to wear a deadpan outfit and wake the male lead up. What kind of heavenly life is this? The male lead is way too lucky. Without further ado, Laura got straight to the point and forcefully invited Ichika to a summer festival date. But Laura's expectant gaze and shy behavior only received the answer, "Good luck with that." Tell me, would being in this harem not make you angry? But Ichika's shamelessness clearly did not stop there. The scene changed. At the academy gate, perhaps because he had calculated that Cecilia would return to school today, Ichika had been waiting here early. And when Cecilia saw the person she liked coming to pick her up, her happiness level instantly shot through the roof. Seeing that Cecilia had completely fallen, Ichika handed over the date invitation at exactly the right time. This time, wouldn't little Cecilia be easy to win over? Without further ado, the next target was Sun Shangxiang. At this moment, Ling was leisurely eating an ice pop, but her mouth kept muttering complaints. It turned out that the scumbag Ichika had not come to see Ling once the entire summer break. But unexpectedly, speak of the devil, and he arrived. Ichika came uninvited. Along with his wolf-like gaze, Ling finally caught the chance to vent this burning anger openly. But fighting is fighting. The date still had to happen. The scene changed to the next target, the childhood friend. Although, being disturbed while bathing is a terrible thing, as a harem member, a little scheme can often rapidly bring two people closer. Compared with the other girls, Huki sent a message. Then it was time for the final harem member. But no one expected that Charles was currently busy working a summer job. It seemed this job was not stable at all. A police car chasing villains actually led the suspects to the cafe. I have to say, these bad guys really had no eyes. Of all people they could provoke, they came up and provoked Laura, who was born from Special Forces training. Laura raised her hand and fired 3 shots. While suppressing the criminals, she followed up with a spinning kick and completely destroyed their ability to fight. Seeing this, the accomplice beside them could not endure it. He immediately wanted to stand up for his brother. But no matter how much he calculated, he forgot Charles existed. The result was that he was beaten until he fell flat on his back. Seeing his brothers lying collapsed on the ground. After only a few rounds, the leading suspect struggled to get up and wanted to drag everyone down with him. But then again, during this standoff, what is with that sudden blush on your face? Before he could even act arrogant, he was subdued by Charles and Laura together. Tell me, isn't this just messing around? The scene changed. After a busy day, the two bought crepes at dusk to recharge. Although there was a small incident in the middle, that made Charles extremely embarrassed. At least the ending was still perfect. But the good times did not last long. By evening, Charles happily struck back. Meow. Who would not love such an adorable little cat? Ichika was naturally no exception. But, back to the point, his purpose in coming this time was to invite the final harem member. But, the next day, the girls absolutely never expected that the date they had looked forward to would be so disappointing when the time arrived. Scumbag Ichika, just as expected, had invited every harem member to the same date. All I can say is this Ichika is truly shameless. That garbled ASR line is unclear. Another garbled ASR line is unclear. Another garbled ASR line is unclear. Another garbled ASR line is unclear. Under the bright moonlight, the girl hid a mystery. A small fan. Created just the right sense of mystery between the ribs and palm. That well-measured distance made Ichika perfectly miss the start of class. As a result, when facing Chifuyu's questioning, poor Ichika retreated step by step, looking utterly miserable. To make him learn his lesson, Chifuyu made a decisive decision and arranged for the smiling Tiger Charles to give Ichika one-on-one special training. You can tell how brutal it was just from the sound. But what happened next shocked the academy directly. Ichika was stunned for 10,000 years. That unfamiliar blue-haired, red-eyed cute girl, the woman who made him late and punished, was actually the Academy Student Council president. This left Ichika truly unable to speak. He had suffering, but nowhere to complain. As for why Tadanashi wanted to approach Ichika, all I can say is that as the only male in a girls' academy, Ichika was far too popular. But Ichika was not a weak person. When he heard Tadanashi wanted to become his coach, Ichika's firm attitude showed his position, since he was being completely underestimated. Then let them have a one-on-one match. On the training platform, hearing Tadanashi's contemptuous words, at this moment, Ichika wanted to prove himself more than ever. However, the student council president's strength was no joke. The reason she dared to look down on you, Ichika, was because she really had the strength to do so. After several exchanges back and forth, Ichika could not even touch her at all, seeing his stamina drop rapidly. While Tadanashi remained unusually arrogant, Ichika knew he did not have many chances left. Gathering all his strength, Ichika attacked again, directly aiming for the girl's weak point. But looking at Tadanashi's expression, it was not hard to imagine what kind of special treatment Ichika was about to suffer. In a daze, Ichika felt as if he had escaped Tadanashi's claws. At the end of the world, a very beautiful girl was standing there. Ichika desperately wanted to see the girl's face clearly. But in a moment of carelessness, the dream woke up. Looking up, the girl had turned into Tadanashi. What was worse was that Laura pushed the door open at this moment, and personally witnessed everything that happened. What else was there to say? The moment Laura confirmed her target, she only wanted to make her pay the price. However, the result did not go as she wished. Laura was not her opponent. This time, Ichika was completely out of options. He could only obediently accept Tadanashi's special training. But that brutal training intensity left Ichika utterly exhausted, despite all his determination. The moment he dragged his tired body back home and saw Tadanashi inside the dorm room, Ichika became like a mouse seeing a cat. But this really was his own room. Ichika was utterly confused and extremely angry. But seeing Tadanashi's frightened expression, Ichika really could not bear to be harsh. However, Ichika, busy dealing with Tadanashi, would never have imagined that a storm was about to arrive. Huki was walking over with joy. As the saying goes, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. When she heard a stranger's voice, this time Huki would not let it pass no matter what. Huki broke through the door, as fierce as a tiger. But no matter how much dissatisfaction she wanted to express, the powerful Tadanashi could always protect Ichika. Seeing this, I can only say, Ichika is doing pretty well as the harem master. However, after defeating Hoki, Tadanashi's attitude changed completely. Pay attention to this blonde girl before you. She gently took Ichika's hand and thoughtfully introduced Byakushiki's modification plan. Her words and behavior were full of tenderness. But you absolutely could not imagine that all of this was only an illusion. Because in the next second, this sudden move left Ichika completely dumbfounded. An uneasy feeling rose in his heart. The woman's unruly expression clearly showed that she was a dangerous, hard-to-handle beauty. However, when Ichika summoned Byakushiki, yes, you saw that right, she became even more excited. After a brief flash of light, silent zephyrs appeared in the world. This was a special type of IS unit, with the intense firepower attached to its arms. The girl once made the world tremble in fear. All direction, no dead angle shooting, was the charm of silent zephyrs. But the girl seemed not to know that Ichika was a complete and utter dense blockhead. How could he appreciate this kind of beauty? Ichika refused to back down and wanted to make her suffer a little. But as a member of the evil organization, the girl's strength far exceeded Ichika's imagination. A frontal hit caused his shield value to drop rapidly. Ichika released electronic interference smoke to widen the distance from the girl, then switched methods and continued getting beaten. With such a foolish younger brother, Chifuyu felt a serious headache. Helplessly, she could only have the teacher immediately notify the harem members and tell them to fully arm themselves and head to the changing room to assist Ichika. Meanwhile, Ichika's situation was extremely bad. Attacking silent zephyrs from the front was truly unbelievable. But by the time he understood Silent Zephyr's power, everything was already too late. The girl could finally achieve her desired goal. That was to take away Byakushiki's core. In fact, this familiar scene was not the first time. Back then, the one who kidnapped Ichika and caused Chifuyu to miss the finals was also the evil organization. However, the furious Ichika could do nothing. It seemed destruction was already inevitable, yet perhaps not. Because Tatanashi-senpai arrived. But unexpectedly, as the student council president, Tatanashi was defeated instantly after a single exchange. Ichika could not accept this result. But how could senpai possibly be that weak? A clone made of water gave the girl a harsh warning. Within her domain she was invincible. As the surrounding water mist spread, endless energy became available for Tatanashi's use. Seeing her own fierce attacks have no effect, Silent Zephyr suddenly realized this was no ordinary mist. But how could she willingly lose to this little girl? With a feint to the east and an attack to the west, she gained the initiative. Without the slightest hesitation. After a burst of attacks, when the smoke cleared, Tatanashi had lost the protection of her IS. Powerless to resist, she let the spider threads cover her entire body. However, when Silent Zephyrs approached Tatanashi, a faint smile flashed across her face. The outcome was actually reversed. It turned out that the mist that had never dispersed was Tatanashi's nanotechnology. At the same time, Ichika launched a fierce attack. But just as he was about to chase the fleeing Silent Zephyrs, a new enemy appeared. How powerful must a girl be to make Ichika look this miserable? To the point that one cannon blast sent him flying toward a high tower. Not only that, when facing all the harem members, the girl still did not fall behind at all. She was overwhelmingly arrogant. Laura's forbidden field, which had never lost before, was as fragile as paper in front of her. This was a fact Laura could not accept. If the girl had not received the retreat order, then, with everyone present, probably no one could have subdued her. Unexpectedly, Autumn still had one more move. Silent Zephyrs, having lost its core, rushed toward the crowd, attempting to wipe out all the harem members. The girl's name was Madoka Orimura. Judging from the current situation, Madoka was not treated well in the organization. If her older sister had not stepped out to control the scene, the outcome would have been hard to predict. But the night Madoka did not care about any of that, because at this moment her eyes held only revenge. Back in the era when Chifuyu dominated the arena, there were too many people who disliked her. For that reason, they used Ichika's genes and successfully created Madoka Orimura. But if they wanted to use Madoka to eliminate Chifuyu, they first had to deal with Ichika. Night always hides danger. The turbulent storm made Laura fear she might arrive too late. But how could Laura forget that when things got serious, she was not Madoka's opponent? Fortunately, to avoid drawing more attention, Madoka did not attack too much. She only left a warning fire. This matter was still discovered by Big Sister. Big Sister sternly warned Madoka not to create extra trouble. But the moment she was pinned down on the bed, Madoka also made a countermeasure. If Big Sister dared to act, then she herself knew the consequences. But one thing exceeded her expectations. Madoka's desire to eliminate Chifuyu was even stronger than she thought. In Big Sister's eyes, Chifuyu without an IS would be easy to deal with. But Madoka's attitude was like this. That garbled ASR line is unclear. Another garbled ASR line is unclear. At the same time, inside the IS Academy, Ichika had a real headache this time. Thinking back to Madoka, who looked as if she had been carved from the same mold as Chifuyu, Ichika simply could not understand it, by chance. When Chifuyu passed by, Ichika still wanted to know whether they had any other family. For a moment, the scene became quiet. But Chifuyu firmly told Ichika no. It seemed that regarding Madoka Orimura's origin, only Bunny's sister could personally investigate it. Ha 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 ha. Pay attention to this girl busy working. She had not closed her eyes for 3 days. All because she wanted to surpass her older sister. But the facts in front of her were not ideal. Her sister was the strongest existence in the IS Academy, and she herself was not a robot. In the end, she still needed rest. But what the girl did not know was that her sister had always cared about her deeply, and simply could not bear to watch her own younger sister keep going like this. And so, this scene happened. That younger sister was named Kanzashi Sarashiki. Although her temperament was a little gloomy, as a national representative cadet studying here, she definitely possessed extremely strong ability. However, because Byakushiki suddenly intervened, the people originally developing Kanzashi's personal machine were all assigned by the higher-ups to develop Byakushiki instead. So during this academy tag tournament, Tatanashi begged Ichika to partner with her sister. It could also help ease Kanzashi's mood. Although Ichika agreed somewhat reluctantly, Tatanashi still had concerns, because her relationship with her younger sister was not good. If possible, Tatanashi hoped Ichika could persuade her sister in a natural way. But afterward, Ichika was the unlucky one, facing Laura's request to be his partner. His refusal blurted out and hurt three people's hearts. Seeing Laura's anger flare and the scene about to lose control, Chifuyu's arrival saved Ichika. But back to the point, since the harem already knew the situation, Ichika could go find Kanzashi. Passing through the crowd to the back row of the classroom, Kanzashi was currently adjusting her machine data. Ichika's abrupt interruption made Kanzashi very unhappy. She clenched her fist tightly but did not strike, because she was simply too tired. She had once longed for a hero to appear and save her from danger, but late at night, Ichika shamelessly came to find Kanzashi again. But Kanzashi did not want to deal with him at all. Who knew Ichika would become even more excessive? Remembering Tatanashi's instructions, he actually said something like this. Honestly, I think that slap was not undeserved. But after returning to the dorm, Kanzashi became depressed. She did not expect that she had really hit Ichika. The scene changed to the training field one day. After her own unremitting efforts all this time, Kanzashi began piloting Uchigane No. 2 for its first flight. The clear weather seemed to symbolize success. But while trying the point-burst acceleration stage, the engine suddenly malfunctioned and shut down, seeing all kinds of warning windows appear on the screen. Kanzashi could no longer control the machine, seeing that she was about to crash into the academy and be reduced to dust, and that her sister would forever drift away from her. Kanzashi regretted her own incompetence from the bottom of her heart. But, at this critical moment, that hero came. Ichika used his body to forcibly catch the falling Kanzashi. Although he himself was in pain, what Ichika worried about more was Kanzashi. Pay attention to this girl before you. At this moment, she was on a date with the boy. Her gentle movements and shy expression made the two look like a couple, no matter how you looked. Not only that, during class, the cute girl spacing out had only the boy in her mind. In a daze, a beam of warm sunlight entered the girl's world. Thinking back to her confused life all this time, this was never what she truly wanted. How could she not hope, just like in anime, for a hero to descend by her side, guiding her from darkness toward the light? Now that hero had appeared, Ichika brought hope to the girl. He brought the girl the motivation to move forward. Perhaps sometimes problems you cannot solve yourself become extremely simple when viewed from another angle. Since Uchigane No. 2 lacked firepower data, then for someone with an advanced machine, like Ichika, solving this problem should be easy. Seeing Ichika care so much about her, the girl unconsciously lost her heart a little. Ichika suggested letting the maintenance department help, but it was already late today. So for now, they should each go home first. But just then, the girl blushed and said something. However, how could Ichika understand what that meant? Only the girl who returned to her room was left asking herself, could this be what they call love? The scene changed to the next morning. At Ichika's invitation, the maintenance department mobilized everyone to help tune Uchigane. Number 2. Do not be fooled by how clueless Ichika is sometimes. So many girls revolve around him. Yet he understands nothing like a blockhead. But this time, when it came to the girls' matter, I have to say he was truly serious. Because this time he really paid a huge price. He actually used himself as a bargaining chip. Helping non-stop during repairs was one thing. And after work, he even agreed to their request for a date. Where else could you find such a good boy? Fortunately, hard work paid off. After a full day of work, they wiped the sweat from their foreheads and looked at the brand new Uchigane No. 2 before them. Clearly, the outcome was good. This modification not only perfected Uchigane No. 2, but more importantly, solved the girl's urgent problem. The girl sincerely thanked all the maintenance staff. But in truth, she wanted to thank Ichika even more. It was Ichika's appearance that changed all of this. She understood that better than anyone. He led her out of the darkness. Afterward, the girl specially brought pastries to reward Ichika. But just then, the girl saw her sister appear here. Although she did not understand why she had come, the girl could not help feeling confused. However, when she heard that all the machine data came from her sister, the girl's heart felt as if it had been struck by a heavy hammer. It was painful and unbearable. Thinking back to the happy moments she shared with Ichika, the love in the girl's heart, like the pastries, fell into an endless cold wind. The scene changed. Inside the dark room, only the utterly defeated girl was crying countless wrong tears for love. Yes, she was in too much pain. The girl cried until her eyes turned red, because she really could not accept that everything she had received, and the wonderful life she had longed for, was all given by the sister she hated. Could it be that in her sister's eyes, she was truly that useless? A pair of massive hands once again sealed the girl's heart. Seeing that the tag tournament was about to begin, Ichika still could not find the girl anywhere. In a dark corner, she crouched there, completely withdrawn. But just then, danger arrived. The academy was suddenly attacked by unmanned IS units. And there were as many as 5 of them. I have to say, these unmanned machines really know how to pick their timing. Of all times to come. They just had to arrive right as the match began. Clearly they did not take the IS Academy seriously at all. The scene changed. At this moment the training field was in chaos. The unmanned IS units were far stronger than anyone imagined. Facing Ling's dragon cannon burst. And Cecilia's firepower coverage. Not only could they withstand everything, they could even counterattack at the same time. This was something no one had expected. And at the same time, on the other side of the training field, Laura and Charlotte were also struggling greatly. At this moment the situation was extremely unfavorable. However, the worst was still to come. Because one of the machines had targeted the girl who had no will to fight, facing the enemy rushing fiercely toward her. The terrified girl could only place her hopes on you. At the critical moment, Ichika broke through the air and arrived, firmly protecting the girl in front of him. Seeing the enemy about to fire a pulse cannon, Ichika immediately told the girl to activate Uchigane number 2. Through their cooperation, they successfully blasted the enemy out of the academy corridor. At the same time, the battle on the president's side entered its climax. Senpai chose to give up the water mist and convert all defense power into attack. A violent tremor swept across the entire training field. For a short time, communication signals were jammed. However, after the signal reconnected, the tragic scene that came through directly sent the girl into a rage. What are you doing? Along with the pilot's emotions, Uchigane number 2's performance was pushed to its limit by the girl. An unforgivable rage rose from deep within her. At this moment, the girl only wanted to completely crush the enemy before her. Seeing the enemy core right in front of her, at the critical moment, Uchigane number 2 failed her. The enemy directly smashed the unconscious Ichika toward the girl. What should she do now? The girl had no method and no ability to save Ichika. As the broken mechanical arm returned to the machine, perhaps this was reality. Heroes simply do not exist in real life. It was not ideal. In a daze, the girl arrived in the mental space. President. It had been so many years since she called her sister that. Yes, how could there be a flawless hero in everyday life? Everyone cries and everyone fails sometimes. But as long as you never give up, then the so-called hero can be played by yourself. The president, lying in her arms, gave the heart of mist to the girl. At this moment the battle was not over yet. At Akatsubaki's call, Ichika woke from unconsciousness. Akatsubaki used Kenran Butu to help Ichika restore energy. The girl was responsible for restraining the opponent and buying time for the two of them. Although the energy was no longer enough to use the electronic pulse cannon, Uchigane number 2's built-in missile launch system could still operate. So restraining the opponent was still more than enough. Very soon, the two who had completed energy transfer joined the battle again. Akatsubaki fully unleashed its armor-breaking attack. The roaring strike successfully took down the enemy's right arm. The following Byakushiki took away its left arm. The girl, refusing to fall behind, used the Heart of Mist to launch the final blow at the enemy. But when the smoke cleared, the opponent seemed to be unharmed. However, the Heart of Mist was clearly not weak either. This time, the enemy finally vanished completely. Everyone could not help letting out a sigh of relief, as Ling and Laura's side also won one after another. This time victory belonged to the IS Academy. Inside the infirmary at sunset, the unconscious older sister slowly woke up. The girl beside her was extremely worried. Although the two sisters had always had a bad relationship, deep down, who would not want to reconcile? Who would not want a happy family? I think you probably feel the same way. Invincible one. Invincible one. That garbled ASR line is unclear. Run. Do you know, in all of Infinite Stratos, who truly stands at the ceiling of combat power? Perhaps you think the Student Council President is already strong enough. After all, in her duel, President Tatanashi relied on her own power to toy with the enemy in the palm of her hand. She deserved the title of the Academy's strongest. But in fact, that is still far from enough, because Ichika in Reiraku Byakuya form is also very strong. When Gospel invaded the Academy's inner area, Ichika relied on his unyielding belief and extremely tenacious will. Even while the enemy firmly gripped his throat, he forcefully broke open Gospel's core. In the end, he protected the Academy and won. But that still is not enough. Another extremely powerful one is Laura, as one of the Harem members. Before Laura was tamed in the early stage, her performance was extremely dominant. Even striking the male lead in front of everyone was nothing to her. And, even when Ling and Cecilia attacked together, they still had absolutely no way to deal with her. Instead, Laura fiercely beat them down. From this, you can see that Laura is indeed powerful, but there is still someone even stronger than her. That person is the cell-enhanced bunny sister Tabane. Today Tabane was originally in a good mood. She was eating delicious steak and drinking red wine. Although she saw at a glance that the soup in the distance was strange, because she had good food with her. Tabane did not escalate the matter. But unexpectedly, the other side became even more aggressive. Seeing this, Tabane smiled slightly and stopped pretending. After a series of operations, they were defeated on the spot with resentment. Taban said, "With this, you dare challenge a cell-enhanced person. Aren't you underestimating me a little too much?" But, just then, Madoka piloting her machine suddenly broke through the wall. Big Sister suddenly became amused. But no one expected that. In a single exchange, the bunny disappeared. Then an unbelievable scene appeared before the gentleman watching. What kind of move is dismantling a Gundam barehanded? Not only that, Tabane recognized the girl before her at a glance. This was something Big Sister had not expected. The situation she had carefully designed was nothing but child's play in Tabane's eyes. But in fact, this was only Tabane's strength on the surface, because behind the scenes where no one knows, she is even more absurdly powerful. All the seemingly abnormal operations today were actually done by her. At first, she hacked the networks of powerful nations, making tens of thousands of missiles attack the Academy, just to prove the power of IS units. And Ichika, enrolling in the Girls' Academy, was also manipulated by her. In truth, everyone can pilot IS units. She was the one who set restrictions. When someone suddenly reacted to an IS unit, that person naturally and legitimately became the world's only male who could pilot IS. I have to say, I suspect Tabane's brain cells were enhanced too. After that, from the first machine descent, to Gospel's later surprise attack, and to Madoka's appearance in this arc, all of it happened because she was too bored at the top. That was why she manipulated everything. But no one expected that her true purpose in doing all of this was only to have a match against Chifuyu. Pay attention to this bunny before you. Who would have thought that 1 second she was friendly with Chifuyu, and the next she became acquainted with Chifuyu's sworn enemy? Not only that, what she did next was even more absurd. When it comes to building machines for villains in anime to fight the protagonist team, she can truly be ranked #1. Sure enough, the scene changed and Madoka came to find Ichika. But at this time, Ichika was still kept in the dark. He wondered why this Madoka kept staring at him. However, when he learned that Madoka's target was Chifuyu, Ichika could not help freezing. But before he could react, Madoka's attack had already followed. In just one exchange, the Black Knight had already defeated Ichika and left in style. At the same time, on a distant tower, the blonde Big Sister was leisurely observing the enemy situation. However, the president's sudden visit disturbed everything. Big Sister was very unhappy about it, but everything was within expectations. The fierce tightening of the saw teeth made the president suffer terribly. But as the Academy's strongest student council president, how could she die so easily? While turning into water mist and entangling Big Sister, the president piloted her machine and escaped. But Big Sister clearly did not want to let her go. At the same time, when Kanzashi and the distant vehicle learned that the vehicle everyone was in had a threat, even Chifuyu could not help frowning. Although the Academy had already sent upperclassmen to rush to the scene for support against someone with a personal IS unit, no matter how many ordinary machines there were, they were just useless fish. A black tornado roared forward and instantly destroyed all the machines. Seeing that very little time was left, Cecilia and Hoki, who came to support, were firmly held back by M. They could not break free, and the president's side was not having an easy time either, facing the enemy in Dragon Emperor form. That overwhelming power made even the Academy's strongest president fall into a disadvantage and plunge into the river. Her life or death was unknown, and then something even worse happened. Madoka had completely locked onto the Academy vehicle. Looking up, Chifuyu truly did not expect that the machine Madoka piloted was the Black Knight. At the critical moment, Ichika finally arrived. In order to protect Chifuyu, as her younger brother Ichika would not shirk this duty. However, unlocking the vehicle targeting would take time. During this period, Ichika would be everyone's final fortress. Passing through the bridge, Ichika lured Madoka to an open area, trying his best to buy time for the disaster response team to unlock it. Fortunately, the effort paid off. After a short while, Kanzashi successfully unlocked the vehicle targeting. At this point, the Academy sounded the horn of counterattack. Under Chifuyu's command, everyone piloted their IS units and gathered on the vehicle roof. Ling and Laura, with better power output, were assigned to stop the vehicle, while Charlotte and Kanzashi were responsible for finding the threat. Seeing how little time remained, Ichika was extremely worried. But when Charlotte found the threat, the scene he feared most still happened. The massive explosion made Ichika lose focus for a moment. However, on a battlefield that changes in an instant, losing focus means